Hello, I'm Brian Foster, and welcome to our live stream on May 23rd, 2021 on Sunday. We are bringing to you this around the world. I am Brian Foster, and I am talking about Spiritism. I come live stream every Sundays and Tuesdays around this time, so please hit the bell. That way you'll be notified when I live stream. Now we are continuing on. This is chapter 15 in The Evolution in Two Worlds, a book by Chico, Xavier and Waldo Veira. They were both mediums interpreting and being inspired psychosomatic, meaning that they psychograph, I should say, that they write down what spirits communicate to them. And this is a very detailed book about the evolution in the spirit world and how it affects the evolution in the physical world. And chapter 15 is spiritual vampirism. So it's not vampires like we see in movies, Bram Stoker or Vlad the Impaler, but it's more of a parasite type, one that sucks energy out of you. That's why they call it vampirism. Now, before I begin, first of all, this is a book done by two spiritist mediums, and I talk about Spiritism. Spiritism was codified in the 1850s by Allan Kardec. And what he did is he wrote a series of 1,019 questions asking spirits all sorts of different questions, because he was part of mediums meetings in which he explored what the spirits were telling him. And every time, at first it was just frivolous, but every time he was in the mediums meeting, it got very serious. And he finally found out that he did have a mission. He had a mission to codify Spiritism. And this is all promised to us in the New Testament, with Jesus saying, I will bring you a consoler, the Spirit of Truth. And the Spirit of Truth organized all the spirits that would talk to the different mediums. He gave questions to different mediums, and he wouldn't use the answers unless they were the same or similar. That's how he codified the Spirits book. The Spirits book is available in PDF. You can get it free. I also have it on my YouTube channel. I've read every chapter. You can also go to my blog, NW Spiritism, right there, nwspiritism.com, and you can download MP3 or MP4 something files. It's an audible file where you can find out where you left and all that, go chapter by chapter. So you can download that also on my blog. So there's many different ways. I recommend anyone interested in Spiritism to read the Spirits book. Of course, I have my own books, and I'll go into that later, but this is really what you should read, which is the headquarters, the headwaters, I should say, of Spiritism. So now, let's get to Evolution in Two Worlds, Vampirism. In this chapter, chapter 15, is labeled Spiritual Vampirism, and this section is called Parasitism in the Lower Kingdoms. In view of the occurrences of obsession and vampirism in the physio-psychosomatic vehicle, meaning us, in the physical form, it is important to recall the phenomenon of parasitism in the lower kingdoms of nature. Without addressing physiological symbiosis meaning that the mutual benefit by some parasites, and there's in which so sometimes some parasites help you and you help them. It's an equal, in which microorganisms indwell in the intestinal tract of their hosts and absorb the nutritive juices, generating in turn substances useful to the existence of their host, which we have billions of these things. We can also find parasitic associations in the animal kingdom. They come in the shape of a partnership, where one of the partners, by nearly always skillfully insinuating itself, creates special advantages for itself with obvious harm to the other, who becomes the victim. So he's going to go through and first talk about what is a parasite. So then you can see what he's saying, and you can relate that to what they're talking about spiritually. I'll carry on. In this unbalanced relationship, the victims end up accommodating themselves to the external pressures of their tormentors for an undetermined amount of time. In other instances, however, they suffer the direct intrusion into their innermost tissues, an impertinent occupation that sometimes degenerates into a destructive conflict that in most cases become an agreement of tolerance due to the need for adaptation that lasts until the death of the exploited host. It might even generate very long-term effects, interfering with the principles of heredity as roots of the conqueror invade the protoplasmic components of the cells, thus going way beyond the generation in which the parasitic partnership began. Consequently, concerning the situation of parasites with respect to their hosts, we may classify them as ectoparasites when their activity is limited to the surface area, and as endoparasites when they lodge themselves in the innards of the body upon which they have imposed themselves. We must not forget, however, that every long-term exploitative symbiosis, especially the kind that occurs internally, results from the progressive adaptation between host and parasite, both of which, despite reacting to each other, slowly agree to the partnership and settle into it without the host considering the risk and losses it is exposed to, thereby compromising not only its own life, but the very existence of its species. The next section is called Transformation of the Parasite. So what he's basically saying is sometimes we, species, and maybe us, whatever, get into these partnerships, but we don't really understand the long-term effects. It may just kill out everything, which has happened in species throughout since the dawn of time. Okay, next section. Thus, on the broad spectrum of events of this order, there are temporary parasites such as leeches and nearly all the hematophagous insects, which only temporarily visit their hosts, occasional or pseudoparasites, which, systematically speaking, are not actually parasites, but which vampirize other animals when environmental conditions make them do it. Permanent parasites, which adjust to an exclusive host existence by indissoluble ties, which are almost all found among the endoparasites, meaning outside of the body, so-called heterogeneous parasites, which become adults in a fixed biological cycle by counting on one or more intermediary hosts during the larva stage, and then reaching their definitive form in the final host, and hyperparasites, which are parasites of other parasites. Concluding that parasitism amongst animals is not derived from a natural condition, but instead from a veritable adaptation on their part to a particular mode of behavior, we can state that they tend toward new characteristics within the species. Thus, within its regime of adaptation, the parasite undergoes substantial mutations expressed in its form by organic reductions or amplifications. We can see that the disappearance of certain organs of locomotion in permanent parasites and the consequent formation of organs necessary for their stability must be analyzed as phenomena inherent to harmful symbiosis. To that effect, we can observe in them the ease of reproduction and vital endurance with the extreme ability of incisement through which they build up protective resources and isolate themselves from adverse environmental factors such as heat or cold. And these are very internal. They stay within your warm-blooded animal. They also tolerate lengthy periods of abstaining from any nourishment, as happens with the bedbug, which can live for more than 6 months in a state of complete fast. As we continue to examine the changes in active parasites, we observe that many flatworms and ringworms that, due to parasitism, have lost their locomotive appendages, replacing them with cups or hooks. We can further observe the degeneration of the digestive system in various endoparasites of the intestinal variety, and sometimes even the complete extinction of the system, as is the case with many cestoids and antisocephalians, invariably living in the abundant supply of nutritive juices already prepared in their host intestines. So he's talking about some parasites. So he's trying to get you the concept of some parasites evolve themselves so when they're inside the host and the host is like digesting food, well, they don't need digestive organs in there because they already have digestive food. They don't need to be able to walk anywhere because they're right there in the bloodstream or in the stomach or in the intestine. So this is all different things that parasites also undergo their transformation that makes them better adapt to the host. Now let's go with transformations of the host. However, while the parasite can display impressive transformation due to their new existence, the consequences for the host of such associations are more profound. After digging in, the assailants multiply dangerously, pillaging the victim's organic resources, sucking out its vitality, traumatizing its tissues, causing partial or total lesions, are spreading toxicity like the high fever caused by infections, as they sometimes accelerate their health death. As they carry on in their pernicious or lethal activity, they are able to irritate or destroy cells, obstruct cavities in the intestines or vessels, hinder functions, and obliterate important glands, such as the genital glands, which can even lead to sterility, despite the host's defensive resources jumping into action and creating cellular armies to fight the infestation, expelling the invaders to the natural route or neutralizing their penetration by the fibrous membranes that envelop them, incising them at the start in tiny calcified sacs inside the tissues in order to kill them later. Get a drink here. So he's talking about different ways the hosts deal with parasites. So now, then he's talking about a parasite that lives on blood obtained by means of a bite. The bacterium transmits the parasite through its feces to the whole human organism, where it generally goes on to reside in endocellular form in the muscles, nervous system, bone marrow, or other tissues. Depending on the organism's resistance, it spreads from there, performing the role of microscopic executioner, persecuting and destroying defenseless populations. So the parasite is destroying the host. Now he wants to relate all this, right? Parasites really, some sort of symbiosis. It's better for the parasite. It takes from the host. Now he's going to relate this to the physical world and the spirit world. Now, this section is called Obsession and Vampirism. Now this is where we're getting important here. In a different process, albeit manifesting the same principles of harmful symbiosis, we find the circuits of obsession and vampirism among incarnates and discarnates. Circuits which have existed since remotest times, when the human mind, illuminated by reason, was called by the principles of divine law to renounce selfishness, cruelty, ignorance, and wrongdoing. Nevertheless, since most discarnate human beings rebelled against the sacred invitations and were free to choose their own pathways, what he's saying is, if you adhered to being a good, charitable, fraternal, honorable person who listened to your conscience, this won't happen to you. You are immune from vampirism. But just like the story of Adam and Eve, when you said, oh, no, let's leave this Garden of Angels, let's do it, Garden of Eden, let's just do what we want to do. Well, then that allows in all these type of infections, which we're talking about, the spiritual infections, moral infections. So let's carry on. Large numbers of them begin to oppress those still incarnate, fighting for affections and riches. Now, that means other spirits that were discarnate, that were left behind in the flesh, or attempting acts of vengeance and wrongdoing if they had suffered the liberating process of discarnation under criminal circumstances. So let's talk about that. So he's saying that these spirits who are not spiritual, are not evolved or mature spirits, they still part of Earth. Now they're tied to Earth, and they want to latch on to an incarnate, and sometimes they want, because they want just to feel the materialness of the world through these incarnates, meaning us physically on Earth. And sometimes they say, oh, that person killed me, or I was killed because of the army that person led going through my village or whatever. I want revenge, and therefore they're going to do whatever they can for that, against that person still alive, but they're spirits, and they want to try and harm them as much as possible. Let me carry on. As soon as the victims of homicide and violence, patent brutality, or disguised persecution find themselves outside the physical vessel, meaning they've died, they penetrate the mental field of their offenders with a knowledge of the enormity of their offenders' hidden wrongs. Okay, remember, you're an open book. We think in this physical world that if we just keep our mouth shut, no one knows what we've done. I'm sorry. Good spirits, not so good spirits, spirits who who want to do wrong with you, who wish you harm. They know exactly what you've done and what you're thinking. Carry on. With the knowledge of the enormity of their offenders' hidden wrongs, these discarnates engage in atrocious vendettas, paying back blow with blow and evil with evil instead of forgiveness, with which they would be exonerated from the prison of darkness. So, let's say that you're a person and you're going through life, you've wronged other people, and that you live in this big house and you have all these alarm systems around, or you have guards walking around, and now you have people that want to steal from you. Well, if these discarnate spirits who hate you, they will give inspiration to those criminals that are those physical criminals trying to break into your house. Is, oh, the guard's over there, you're free to go, or you're free to, you're free to go in this way. They'll give them inspiration on how to skirt around any of the protective fences you have. So think about that. You always think about sometimes these criminals, right? And they always like get away at the last moment, and it's probably because they're being inspired by equally bad spirits, so they can get away and they can keep doing bad things. Like the police are coming, and they just, oh, I feel nervous, I better leave. This happens a lot, and it happens a lot on the good side, of course, too. But now I'm just trying to give you instances on the opposite side. Other discarnates expect God to provide them with fulfillment of the puerile caprices. They proclaim themselves incapable of following the path of evolution and become lazy and idle, alleging the divine wisdom's supposed lack of power to alleviate human suffering, which was created by humans in the first place. They flee cowardly and indolent from their duties and tasks. Now, I've seen these in mediums meetings too. It's like, well, and you'll see them. They'll talk through the mediums. God created this chaos. Why should I do anything? How can I, being good, solve anything when this whole world is chaotic and suffering? Well, the suffering is caused by people like you, right? That's what they need to understand. Suffering is caused by imperfect humans who are imperfect spirits. The antidote to suffering in a chaotic earth is for everyone to become better and moral and more mature spiritually. You wouldn't have these problems. You wouldn't have stealing. You wouldn't have murder. You wouldn't have war if you didn't covet your neighbor's resources or, in all of that. So there's not any one system of government. It's not a religion or not a religion. It's people, right? People create what is wrong on earth, no matter how much, I can always hear people say, oh, religion is the worst thing ever happened on earth. Well, no, it's the people who are part of that. And then people say, well, governments are horrible. And it's yes, and it's the people in the governments. There's no one state of government that is going to be perfect. Because why? Because governments is involved in people, and people on earth are imperfect and they are power grabbing. Now, you can have really wonderful people and really want to do great things. And as we all know, and I think most of us have seen in companies, where I have seen this, and I'm sure most of you have seen the same thing, you have a group of people with good intentions. And you may even have a manager or boss who he or she are just wonderful. But then this one person gets in and starts backstabbing them and lying about them and then talking to the management above them and just eases them out through their own evil intentions. You see this all the time. I mean, anytime I've had a really good boss, they're mostly pushed out of their position by someone who is completely inferior to them, but superior to them in backstabbing and social interaction with the higher managers. Of course, most of the higher managers all got there by being the same way. This is why companies, that's why this is the world the way it is because people live on it who aren't perfect yet. So now this next one is fluidic infections. Many attack still incarnate adversaries by simulating their minds with monstrous mental forms, causing disturbances that we may classify as fluidic Fluidic Infections, which cause mental collapse with devastating insanity. So it means they're seeing visions, and they're not quite sure of this or not quite sure of that. And it really confuses them. It's tough. In fact, that's why let's talk in a more innocent sense. Children who are still under like 8 or whatever, they're still tied closer to the spirit world. And they'll see other spirits, and then they'll see things that you just think that's just their kid imagination. Sometimes it is, but they'll see things. And of course, with them, there's just an open, it's this, right? But then as you get older, you expect to see what you see, and then they do that to you just to disturb you and cause you to weaken because they want to obsess you. Carry on. Still, many others become immobilized in the selfish passions of many sorts, and consequently rest in heavy monotheism close to the incarnates, whom they do not feel capable of leaving behind. So, monotheism is like this one God, right? And there's just they may be obsessed by the spirit that all they want to do is drink alcohol or take drugs, and they just get so close to that person. And you read about this in the books by Chico, Xavier, and when someone will obsess and discarnate, the spirit will obsess a incarnate, a physical person, because they want them to do. They want them to partake in something. Now, I just had a question, which is okay, there we go. Can a spirit create a sexual attachment of some kind to you? And the answer is yes. And that happens. A spirit can be an old boyfriend, let's say, that just loved you completely. Then let's take an extreme example first. That loved you completely, and then you betrayed them, or you had them killed because they weren't useful to you anymore. And so they're obsessed with you, and they still want you, but they hate you, right? And therefore they'll try to ruin all your other attachments, right? All your other desires, and just fill your head. So anyone you want to get attached to, they'll try to detach themselves from you. If a good spirit, a high spirit, loved you, like an a wife or husband that passed, boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever, significant other passed, they won't do that to you, right? They will want the best for you, and they will encourage you. They won't create this attachment. That will only happen with a lesser spirit. And they might also want to make you sexually extremely active, because when you have these relations, they want to be part of it, right? They can kind of come into you and feel that excitement and passions that you have. So the answer is yes, they can. And as before, I used an example of drinking or drugs, and this is another type of drug, right? Is that carnal passion. So where are we? Okay, yes. And then some are temporary ectoparasites, behaving like mosquitoes and mites, absorbing the vital emanations of incarnates with whom they are attuned. Still others are like conscious endoparasites. After identifying the vulnerable points of their victim, they envelop them with certain substances related to the chemistry of the spirit, substances we may call sympatins and agglutins that surreptitiously modify their essence of the victim's thoughts that stream continuously from the energy fulcrums of the thalamus and the diastolon. Once this activity is adjustment is established, which discarnates and incarnates comprise in mutual degradation, carry out in frank automatism, like utterly primitive animals. Let me give you an example. And I forgot which book this is in one of the Andre Louis series of books. There was 3 brothers. One brother had 2 brothers drowned in the lake because he wanted to inherit everything. These 2 brothers tried to obsess the other brother. The other brother died, but he left his son in charge of all the inheritance, right? Now, these two brothers who couldn't get to the brother that died, they couldn't find him in the spirit world. He was sent somewhere else. So they obsessed the son, who didn't do anything wrong, but they wanted revenge against this innocent son, and they made him a miser. And they brought other spirits. Now, this is what it's all related to the chemistry of the spirit, where they surreptitiously modify the essence of the victim's thoughts. So what they do is they say, look, we have learned in different schools in the lower zone how you can take the basic building block of a person, like if you're sarcastic or you have a lot of hate, what's that theme you have in your mind, and then we'll take other spirits with that same theme, and then we will amplify it, because your mind's a thought, right? And you put your thoughts out, and then they'll take other spirits and they'll amplify that thought and say, I want money, right? I really want money, and they will put it back in your mind, and you become obsessed with money, for instance. And so this spirit would wake up, he would, from his sleep, right? He'd wander the spirit world. But what do? He just go to his desk and count the money and gold he had in his desk. And when Andre Luis and his band of spirits went there and they watched all this, and the two brothers saying, yes, this is what we did to this guy. We're just making him a complete miser. We're destroying his life and all that. And we're just making him completely obsessed with money. And so he's forgotten about his wife and his children. We're going to ruin his life. And they do that. And they go, well, how do you do that? Well, we find other spirits who are misers that are discarnates now. We force them through our wills to be next to him, and then just amplify his like of money to make it an obsession with money. That's why when I tell people that, if you think you're getting obsessed over anything, take a time out, go do something physical, and know that something's going on. And that's why you got to start exercising your conscience, right? You start to have to filter out these stupid ideas, because it's just like junior high, right? Or middle school, whatever you want to call it, right? When 13, 14-year-old kids, your friends all had the dumbest ideas. And, I did too, of course, but they all had the dumbest ideas, and you weren't smart enough to say no. Okay, so let me, another good question. Now, some people say that your spirit and your soul are the same thing. Is that true, or is there a difference between the two? Now, I do know that some people say they're different. Spiritism uses them interchangeably. So if I say soul or spirit, I mean the same thing, a spirit. But I do know that some people say they're different. But let me explain to you, let me show you, because that's an excellent question. And but I will say that not everyone agrees with me. But in Spiritism, they use that concept interchangeably. So that's important to know. So when I say either one of them, I'm not trying to denote a difference. I'm just trying to give a decent, let me see, where's that picture? I'm trying to find a picture of how this works. Okay, it must be further down. Hold on 1 second. I'll find this. There we go. Okay, so this is what we are made of. We are like three parts right now, we in the physical world. We are the spirit, which is this logical encapsulation of our personality. So you can think of the spirit as being you in its energy form. The paraspirit is your idealized thought of your form. So when you die, you look like how you think you should look like, and your paraspirit gives you the appearance of a physicality. In fact, you can feel yourself. That's why when people die, they don't know they're dead. They think that they're still alive. I've been in meetings where they've said, you've passed on. And they think, well, because they'll say, well, I go to my house, and no one pays attention to me. That's because you're passed on to another dimension. But you think you're the same because you look like who you are, right? And you can feel yourself. But you probably don't notice that you're probably, like me, like if when I die, I'm going to look like my idealized self, means I'm going to be younger and I'll have more hair, right? Those types, and I won't need glasses. Now, when you are a incarnate, meaning you inhabit a physical body, that paraspirit will attach itself to every cell in your body and control your body. And that paraspirit is always connected to your spirit. Whatever happens to your physical body, your spirit's always fine, or your soul. You can call that the soul too. So I hope that answers that question. So that's why we have to be careful, because there are people that want to use that physical body. And it's interesting. In mediums meetings, I first thought, well, why do the spirit world want to bring certain spirits and have them talk to a physical human, right? Through, through trance mediums and all those other types of ways. Why? And the answer is because just like kids, who, if an adult talks to them, they'll just look at them like, huh? But if another child talks to them, then they pay attention. And just like these spirits who are on earth, they don't really understand the concept of being higher ranks in the spirit world and all that. They really want someone physical to talk to them, because that's what they relate to. And so when you're in a spiritist mediums meeting, sometimes, depends on the purpose of the meeting. Let's say the meeting I'm at, they're trying to help other spirits who are errant, right, in the spirit world, but not quite sure what's going on. They want to really bring them in and talk to people who are incarnate, who are physical. Okay, where was I? Okay, so the tormentors normally take control of the neurons of the hypothalamus, intensifying their domination of the unalienated area that connects to the frontal cortex. So they're trying to control your brain, right? They take control of the sensitive areas of the crown center and affix themselves there in order to control stimuli. And when the victims try to contradict their designs, they cause inhibitions of various visceral functions by means of a mechanical influence on the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. In the complex processes of vampirism, such manipulations promote a state of fear or nervous war in the individual on whom they are seeking revenge, altering their psychical screen or imposing continuous harm on the somatic tissues. Of course, this is their aim, right? They want to harm you. Now, ovoid parasites. Now, I talked about ovoid parasites before, but what they are discarnate beings. Now, here you can see we have on the picture on the screen, I have a paraspirit, which is like a light representation that covers your whole body. But they kind of lost that sense of themselves looking a certain way, and they've condensed that paraspirit into more like a football shape, because all they have is these memory loops and these emotions running through them. So let's carry on to see what he says. Excuse me. So, ovoid parasites, this is the next section. When disengaged from the physical body, countless discontented spirits set on the idea of taking justice in their own hands are harmfully attached to others, subtly envelop the objects of their calculated attention, self-hypnotized by the images of affection or revenge, replicated, and this is like the image of affection, right? So someone are just so obsessed with you, just as the question asked before, and they become, this physical desire. They just want to become part of you, and they lose what their paraspirit body looks like, and it looks just like a little ovoid, or like a little light football. They end up in a state of deplorable monodeistic fixation, displaying enormous transformation in the morphology of the spiritual body due to organ psychosomatically atrophied as a result of the disuse. They resemble ovoids attached to their victims, who generally accept their influence mechanically based on thoughts of remorse or late repentance, voracious hatred or demanding selfishness, which they nourish in their own brains through incessant mental waves. So this is where, again, this happens over and over, that they're just obsessed. Okay, we have this question. Okay, this is by Gabriele. What has happened to someone who's schizophrenic, who hears voices and sees and feels things that are not there? So before I say anything, is always consult your psychologist, psychiatrist, your doctor. Some things can just be by physical chemistry of the brain. But This is really the schizophrenia, paranoia, mental illness is being, a lot's being caused by exactly what I am describing, where these ovoids or other spirits attach themselves to your mind and they influence your thoughts. And a schizophrenic is a spirit sometimes will just like completely take over your thoughts. And, you know, sometimes people call this multiple personalities, right? And this other personality will come through. And that will happen. And Allan Kardec, in the book Mediumship, talks about that usually if someone is spiritually strong enough, even if they're incarnate, they can fight this off by meditating, by listening to their conscience. But sometimes when you have someone who is very affected, and these other spirits, and these, as I said before, these other spirits will like this spirit who wants them to do something bad to you, they'll enlist other spirits to help them, these ovoids, that will then replay things, right? And take your basic emotions. Let's say you're kind of worried someone's after you, then they'll just amplify that so someone becomes completely paranoid, right? So they need to have the help of other spirits to disconnect these spirits who do not, excuse me, who mean you not good. In fact, in Brazil, there are spiritist hospitals, and there are psychiatric hospitals that will use, you know, the typical psychiatric techniques in the United States, and they'll also maybe give you some sort of helpful drugs and so forth. But then they'll do something else, and they've had a great amount of success rate. They will then have mediums meetings, and they'll find out, okay, is someone attacking you and why? And they will find out if there are spirits who are set on revenge or some other reason. They will try and work out with these spirits, you know, please don't do that anymore. Spiritism tells us that this whole concept of exorcism is false, right? There's no amount of showing a spirit a cross or holy water. They'll just laugh at that. That doesn't affect them. Really, how Spiritism works with these people is to say, okay, why do you hate that person? Look, that person is trying to do good. They're trying to do better. Why are you taking revenge? Can't you let Jesus and God? They will make sure everyone learns the lessons they need to learn. And that's very important. There's a story that I read in a book about Chico Xavier, and there's this man who, when he was more of a teenager, was like an assistant with Chico, and he was in the line, and his parents came and they said, Chico, can you help my daughter? She's completely schizophrenic. She loses it sometimes. She can't really exist in the world. And Chico said, go and do a good thing. Go help people. So they came back a year later. They said, our daughter's better. Our daughter, she's all better now. And then later she goes, the guy asked Chico, how did the parent's daughter get better? Excuse me. And Chico told him this. Let me get a drink of water real quick. The parents went to help people. They went to a prison. In the prison, they helped these prisoners. They read them books. They helped them with little things. They helped them maybe with their legal problems. The mothers of these prisoners, the mothers in the spirit world, saw the parents doing these wonderful things for their children. These spirit mothers followed the parents back to see where they lived. And then they saw these spirits obsessing their daughter. And the spirits said, don't obsess their daughter. They're helping our children. Stop doing that. Stop making their life horrible. For heaven's sake, stop. And those spirits said, oh, okay, we will. And their daughter got better. So it's the whole thing is, how do you get those spirits to let go of revenge? And, you know, I understand that, right? Because these two brothers, excuse me, these two brothers were robbed and killed by their other brother. They wanted revenge. Who can blame them? But, excuse me. But this is what people have to understand, is that, excuse me. This is what people have to understand, is that the spirit world is created to give you life after life. So you will learn the lesson you need to learn. Now, let me show you this other. And how does that work? How no deed will go unrectified. It won't happen. It will. Everything you do, for every action, there is a reaction. And that is called karma and reincarnation. And the way karma and reincarnation works is that everything is recorded, and everything, every thought you've done, everything is recorded. And so your previous life is recorded in detail, everything, every thought, everything. And this, of course, is why we have an end of life process. When you die, they know everything you've done. Now, as you go through your current life, excuse me, something got stuck in my throat. Results from your previous life is used for your next life. And then your future life, right, is dictated by your current life. And that's where they'll try to explain to these spirits that the spirit world, the aim, why are we on earth? We're on earth to improve our personality and our character. And this is important. Now, let me read this question. Does your spirit or any spirit that possesses or attaches to you have the ability to erase your memories or take away a feeling that you would feel or take away a certain personality trait from you? Now, in the spirit world, any spirit in heaven, any good spirit, is your free will is always respected. Excuse me. Your free will is always respected. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah. Can you still hear me? I did something with the mic. I want to make sure. Okay. Yeah, bless your what? Yes. Okay. There you go. Okay. Now put the microphone. I turned it off because I was coughing too much. So they will respect your free will. They're not allowed to say, okay, Brian, you gotta turn left instead of turning right. And even so, if the lower spirits though can make you so confused and upset that they won't go in there and physically erase your memories, but they'll overload it with something else or make you forgetful. And they'll also, but by then having these other spirits around you giving you these thoughts and desires, they mask a feeling that you would have. And then they can also, now I don't know if they can take away a certain personality trait. I think that's always in you. I don't think that's powerful enough, but they can try to mask it. So they can do things not so direct, and maybe as your question is, but they can do enough things that make it happen indirectly. Now, let me the next question here. So, do amulets and fervent prayer assist to rid of this possession, demonic possession attachments? So, yes, the answer is prayer and meditation help. And then amulets, like there are certain crystals that help your own power and amplify your own power. So the crystals and stuff like that by themselves do not directly, but it's through your own thoughts. Like my wife was told to do a certain like rosary, and then I forgot what type of crystal. She was told to use a certain type of crystal in that rosary because that would help amplify what she was thinking. So this is kind of like this magnetism through the the spirit world. So it's not like, oh, this amulet will protect you directly. No, it's more of how it affects your own thought processes and your own energy. And I believe you have to like find that what works for you. And yes, prayer, of course, prayer and meditation is always the best way, is to get rid of any type of obsession and someone bothering you. And really the way to do it is you meditate and you think, why are you bothering me? What did I do wrong? Right? If I did something wrong, please forgive me. I am imperfect. And I'm learning through the trials and tribulations of my life. And I'm sure I did something bad to you. Please forgive me. And then pray for that spirit obsessing you. Pray for them, because what will happen if you pray for them, the spirit world will come and they'll hear your prayers, and they will try and help this person, this spirit, I should say, to resolve what's bothering them. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll take the spirit and go, look, you're spending all your time obsessing this person. What is that doing? You're ruining that person's life. How's that helping you? You need to start improving yourself. And that's what happens. Is they'll convince them, and then they'll help them what they need to be helped with. And one of the, I think it was a book, Liberation, by Chico Xavier. The spirits were obsessing this poor young woman, who this lower, powerful, demonic spirit wanted to hurt, because he didn't like her mother. And so the spirit team went, and there's this lower spirit that was helping organize these ovoids into obsessing her. And unreleased was part of this team. And so it's a high spirit in a battle against a lower spirit, there's no context. The high spirit has all the power in the world, right? There's no context. So Honorary Luis was expecting that spirit to go, stop obsessing that girl, get the heck out of here. That's not how it worked at all. This is what's so interesting. This is so revealing about the spirit world and how loving and wonderful they are. What the spirit said was, oh, I see what you're doing. Very interesting. How can I help you? And he said, well, my son is in prison, unjustly. And they go, okay, well, let me see how I can help you with that. And this high spirit found out his son was in prison unjustly, went and talked to the judge in his dreams and said, no, you convicted this guy unfairly. You should reopen the case. He got the case reopened, and he got his son released. And what we would think of an evil spirit obsessing this poor innocent young woman said, you did that for me? And it's like a light went on. And he goes, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to help you. And that's when they got this woman released. And he did it not by what we think of good versus evil, where the good guy comes in and shoots everyone. He got it by love. And that's how it works. Okay, let me get another question here. Okay. What happens to you that allows a spirit or gives an opening to a spirit to enter or attach to your mind and influence you? Well, that's a good question, but boy, there's probably so many answers to that. And there's, it may be that you've let yourself, well, first of all, you're most vulnerable when you are the most materialistic or you're involved in a primitive emotion, right? When I say primitive emotion, you hate something, you want revenge, you desire something so much, right? Even though your conscience is telling you not to. This is why you need to really listen to your conscience. And if your conscience makes you stressed because you're making a decision that's not morally correct, you should follow it. So really what happens to you is that you're giving yourself over to some sort of primitive emotions or action that you know is wrong. And then you open up that for them to reinforce whatever that incorrect idea, and that's how they can then get that influence on you. So the more you meditate, the more you study Spiritism, study whatever type of good doctrine, follow the good golden rule, pray and meditate. That's your best defense. Okay, let me carry on with that. Okay, where are we here? We're talking about the ovoids. So the ovoids attach, and they're nourished through the mental waves that when they attach to their victim. I'll carry on. In these situations, the spirit obsessor or parasite may be compared to the Saculini carcini, which, having fully differentiated organs during the free life stage, subsequently entrenches itself in the tissues of the crustacean host, losing its earlier morphological characteristics. So what he's saying is, this ovoid's lost everything, and so their whole life is really it has to be tied, right? So what he's saying is, in the case of a human being, the spirit obsessor begins to live in the personal atmosphere of the victim in complete morbid symbiosis, draining his or her psychical energies, depending on the nature and extent of the moral debt between creditor and debtor. This situation in many cases extends beyond the host's physical death, meaning after even when that poor person who's obsessed, when they die, they're still attached to their spirit. Now you can ask, why does God allow this? This is horrible punishment to someone. And it's allowed because of what they did to that person beforehand. They're saying, okay, well, this is why Jesus said, you're not going to be free until you pay the last cent. Remember that in the Bible? Whatever you need to do, go to your neighbor, right? Pay that last penny. This is what he's saying. If you read the Bible, and this is where a lot of what I have on my blog, and it's what Jesus said. He was telling us the exact truth. Even in parables, like it's just this is it. When he said, "Let the dead bury the dead," he meant spirits will help you get off your physical body and go in the spirit world. If you're lucky, the good spirits will be around you. If you're not, well, the bad ones will be around you. So you need to pay that debt. In fact, don't plot revenge. Don't do these things, and forgive everybody. It works two ways. You need to forgive too. Someone does something bad to you. The reason someone did something bad to you, you have to think this way. Okay, that person did something bad to me. That's probably because I did something bad to someone else, and now they're doing to me what I did to someone before. So you have to think of that person as just being an actor in the play that was sent to teach you a lesson. That's all. Okay, let me carry on. Parasitism and reincarnation. In such cases, when the decomposition of the physical body is insufficient to complete the necessary expiation, meaning paying back for what you did wrong, both victim and persecutor become caught up in the same range of sentiments and thoughts after the grave and experience a dolorous, infernal situation until divine mercy, through its watchful agents, authorizes the reincarnation of a spirit that deserves it first after a detailed study of the wrongs the two had committed and after weighing any mitigating and aggravating factors. Let me give you an example of that. I was in a mediums meeting. And in the mediums meeting, because I'm not a medium, I was on the back wall, right? This one medium started saying, oh, it was a woman going through. And it says, I'm in terrible position. And my husband persecuted me. He put a hot iron to my face, disfigured my face. He treated me like a slave. I hate him. And she went on and complaining about all the things he did. And then another medium on the other side of the table, her husband's spirit. And her husband said, oh, I wish he'd forgive me. Because this was during the time when, a man kind of owned his wife. And I didn't know what I was doing. I did wrong. I just want forgiveness. So you have these two spirits in the spirit world, not growing, not learning anything, but they're locked, right? In their collective wrongdoing. He wronged her, and now she hates him, and she cannot forgive him. And that's what probably why the spirits brought her and him to medium's meeting, so they could kind of talk to the physical human beings and try to work this out, because they need to get out of that loop so they can see the real world. Okay, let me put this other question here. This says, human gets sexual thoughts and wants and acts. Is it automatically a spirit influence you when this happens, or is it a natural thing? When do you know that excuse me, that a sexual thought or urge isn't yours? You know, that's really tough. I think that it's, you know, especially with pornography, is that people get locked into that. And then if there's other spirits around you, they can just get you into all sorts of things. So that's one thing you should need to get yourself out of. But that is something that you need to really on your own figure that out, because that could be different for everybody. It's a great question, and it really gets to the core of you, right? So I would think if there's a thought that goes against your conscience, and this is why we're on Earth, right? We're on Earth to rewire our brain and to improve our personality and our character. So if there's a thought that you want to have some sort of relation to someone, but you know that might hurt someone because you're not really serious, or that person is vulnerable at the time, then it may be you or maybe some other spirit, but you have to say, oh, no, that's the wrong thing to do. I need to protect that person. And that's how you start learning. And in fact, that's why Jesus allows these spirits to be around us, is for us to start learning this type of thing, and for us to make the moral and the correct decisions. So that's really all I can say. It's a great question, but that's something that each person is going to have to ask. Okay. And then a rule says when you're not married. Yeah, I mean, well, that happens to anybody, married or not. We just have to filter everything through our conscience and know what is right and what is wrong. It's a great point. Here's another question. My husband was murdered 18 years ago. 5 years ago, I had a daughter, which right on my awakening, is it possible my daughter is his reincarnation? She was conceived on his birthday, and more synchronicities. So yes, it is. Although it's usually people follow the same sex, but not always. A spirit can come back as either sex. And the fact that she was conceived on his birthday, that's kind of interesting. And then the number of years, so there was, what, 13 years difference, which is plenty of time in the spirit world for them to then be in the spirit world for a while and be incarnated again. So yes, that is possible. And I don't know if she's 5 years, if she's 5, she may say things and say little things that makes no sense to anyone except you, who knows kind of the history of her father. And if you're hearing these things and you're seeing these little quirks and personality traits, yeah, because when the child's under like 7 or 8, they're more tied to the spirit world. And so these things will come out. Now, when she gets to be older than that, she'll lose a lot of that connection. But then what the Spiritism says is that when a child becomes, so they're molded like clay, right? Children are molded like clay. But when they become like maybe 15 to 18 to 20, their true character and personality will start coming through. So she'll go through those early teen years. You know, she'll just be a young teenager. You won't probably see too much then. or you might. But then when she starts really developing her own personality, because that will come through, then you'll see more clues. And then you can make probably a better decision. So yes, the answer is yes. It certainly could be. It's exciting, isn't it? I mean, this is when you know. And of course, and when someone is murdered, that person is met with a lot of sympathy in the spirit world. So there would be spirits around your husband helping him, right? Now, he was murdered, well, because he did something bad to someone else before, and he's paid for that price. So bless him. He's paid for that wrong. And they're probably allowing him to come back. So that's a great thing. So you never know. This is why it's so important. This is why Spiritism is so, it tells you so much. Now, there's other religions they're all wonderful. And Spiritism is really a doctrine, not a religion. But it really is giving you kind of the processes and the procedures of the spirit world. Oh, okay, let me carry on here. Where was I? Oh, yes. Subsequently, once the plan of the beneficiary's return from the spirit realm to the earthly realm is set in motion, this is the reincarnation. The mother who is to endure the ensuing pregnancy because of her debts before the divine laws begins to suffer the siege of dark forces, which in many cases are implanted in her womb by symbionts that influence the gestating fetuses. So they're attacking even the fetus, poor thing. Establishing the very start fluidic connections to the tissues of the forming body. By this process, from infancy onward, the reincarnating spirit continues to be intertwined with its troubled companion or companions, comprising a whole group of guilty souls undergoing readjustment. Thus, the reincarnating spirit proceeds through its early years, grows, gets re-educated, and enters to prime its physical energies, suffering the constant influences of its assailants, until one day, often by means of marriage, in which its trial shapes the couple's loves, or in other difficult circumstances of destiny, it provides its persecutors a new physical body. This way, as children of its blood and heart, they'll be able to settle their past debts using the currency of selfishness. Again, this is done. So, these obsessing spirits. Okay, so let's show this question. What do you do when you die and leave the physical world and enter the spirit world? What all do you do in the spirit world? So this is why I would recommend these books, because this is, I've written a book, I've written other books. This is the latest one. This is the spirit realm. Spiritism has revealed the reality of our existence. This will tell you about the spirit realm, what you do, how you're educated. And in fact, I even go through this, how you can improve yourself. And I actually go through it in greater detail of heaven and below, and the series of 3 books. Heaven and below, so it talks about heaven, the lower zone, and so forth. What happens when you're in heaven? Because this is the great mundane secret. This is why some people don't know they're dead. When you die, you have your paraspirit body. You look like you look, right? Now, if you've been a decent person, you don't have to be a saint like this. About 3 out of 10 people go to heaven in our current culture. You go to a colony, a heavenly city, and there's a city, there's people, there's jobs. You still work. You don't sit around playing a harp all day. There are more jobs than you can think. You can take classes, you can educate yourself, and you can work at what you want to work. You can go, if you prove yourself to be useful and intelligent. That's what the spirit world wants. They want, just like a company wants. They want someone intellectually curious and wants to do these things. You can help, just like Andre Luis did. He was part of missions on Earth to help different spirits, different physical incarnates, go through things, to lead them, to help them through death, help them through birth, all these type of things. It's like school, right? When a child goes from kindergarten to 1st grade, and then like from 5th grade to 6th grade, there's differences, but they're not so much that freak anybody out. It's the same way with heaven. There's differences, but as you go into heaven, there's differences, yet they're wonderful, right? Because Why are you on earth? You're on earth to change your character and your personality. Why is that important? Why do we go through these horrible trials, right? To change our character and personality, to get rid of these primitive emotions. Because in heaven, thought is action. So once you learn enough and you're, like, say, with a group and you want to build your own house, you do this yourself. But you, through your mental powers, you build your house, your mansion. You can build your garden, your lake. Groups of spirits will build whole temples and geographies in heaven. They'll do all these things. And I talk about this in my book, Heaven and Below. And then the second book is Spirits in the Spirit Universe, where that might be the one you really, I have this on Kindle and Audible too, as well as paperback. Well, that's How We're Guided by Spirits. I'm sorry, I want the second book. That shows you how we're guided, what the future of Earth is. Let me find this second book. There we go. Oops. It must be over here. Wait 1 second. I'm getting there. There we are. Spirits in the Spirit Universe, Book 2. That will tell you really there's different levels of heaven, right? This is my first book. But this will tell you how each level has a set of schools and colleges and how you can ascend from one level to another, and how, as you ascend, you accumulate more and more power. So when you hear these people talk about angels and their near-death experiences, and this bright angel, I can't see them. And that's because as a spirit gets higher and higher, they become a higher ratio of energy to matter. And that's like these lower spirits, like these ovoid spirits and these demonic spirits. They're, although they're physical, we're much higher ratio of matter to energy. But as you get higher and higher, you're more energy, and you reflect the love of God, and become. And so a lower spirit sees this reflection. They go, I can't see this. And that's why they think they're angels, because everything's fuzzy. But if you're on the same level of what you thought was an angel, they look normal. That's all how it's done. So I hope that there's a lot there. And this is what's wonderful about Spiritism. It teaches you all these things. It tells you what's going to happen. And it gets you ready. And it tells you why you're going through what you are on earth. And it tells you to improve yourself now, because the reward is 100-fold. Okay, another question. I have seen vampire spirits in my dreams a lot. They're actually surrounding me. So if that means when you are dreaming, right? When you dream, you go to the spirit world, and hopefully many times people go to the higher levels. Like many dreams I had, to give you the opposite, is I'll be like wandering around like a college campus, and I'll go from class to class. I won't remember anything. I'll just remember I was like, what? I didn't understand anything. But that means I probably went to heaven and I was being talked to, but I have no memory of it. Now, if you are like you are, where you've seen vampires, your spirits in your dreams, and they were surrounding you, you were in a lower level in the spirit world, and you're associating with these kind of immature spirits. And that's something that, hopefully they, didn't traumatize you too much. But there are some probably spirits there that have some sort of past interaction with you, or you're talking to them for some reason. But yes, those are, you're in the lower zones and you're talking to those spirits. Now you may be there to help them. Who knows? If you wake up frightened and disturbed, that wasn't a good experience. It means they were probably there to try and frighten you. But if you just like see them and you're not like, vampire spirits, you're probably there as part of a team, maybe to help them, because it's almost easier to interpret your dreams by your emotions. Because look, why are dreams hard to interpret? Because you're here in this physical world, right? And we have 3D, height, width, and depth, and we have time as a line. And you go to this spirit world where there is no time. In fact, you see time. You see the beginning, middle, end of some things, depending on how high you are, how much you can see time. And that's It's really hard to interpret things. And that's why your mind has all these symbols and stuff, because your mind, your physical mind, it can't interpret what your spirit mind can, right? Because you have to look at that perispirit as like a little pipeline, kind of like your internet connection. And your internet connection isn't perfect from your spirit to your brain, because your brain's kind of immature and it only has so much capacity. And that's why it's hard to interpret dreams. I hope that answered, hope that helps. Let me carry on. Okay, treatment for parasitism of the soul. It is important to note that all the sufferings and corrective measures to which we have referred to are circumscribed to incarnate or discarnate consciences and to the principles of the law of action and reaction, which today confers on each individual the equilibrium or disequilibrium caused by his or her deeds. So again, action, reaction, karma. These people will hurt other people because they've hurt someone else in the past. It's all part of learning how this works. He goes, prayers that illuminate and words that help are not sufficient, however, many times. Post-suffering troubling influences, this is a segment. To those whose afflictions during their corporal life attest to the type and extent of their debts, will have to set their own example in the practice of pure love towards others. They will also have to educate and reform themselves, because only through their examples will they be strong enough to operate renewal and readjustment. Again, what I said, if you're having these problems, your friends, is meditation, prayer, and study. And always practice love towards others. Do as much good as possible. This is what he says. The activity of practicing genuine good, displaying a willingness to break from our lower sentiments, produces a powerful means of transformation regarding those who observe us, and especially those who share our lives and influence our spiritual atmosphere. So these spirits that are bothering you, they're not like demons that are evil all the time. They're regular people that are trying to get revenge because of something you've done before. They will say, well, this person's really trying to be good. You know, maybe we shouldn't obsess them anymore. Let me carry on. Moreover, our displays of fraternity inspire edifying and friendly thoughts in others. Because your thoughts go out, right? Just like they have thoughts that try to affect you, your thoughts affect them. Which in successive circuits or continuous waves of renewing energy modify our worst enemy's hostile intent toward us. Think good thoughts. Therefore, we do not have to wait for future reincarnations woven with suffering and tears amid expiatory ties to make peace with enemies from the past, because through devotion to one's neighbor and humility that is truly practiced and felt, we can enrich our words and sanctifying our prayers, thereby attracting invaluable sympathies and providential interventions on our behalf. When they see us transfigured for the better, meaning the spirits, our adversaries are likewise disarmed of evil, finally understanding that the good is our only path of freedom and life before God. That is really the most important thing. Okay, let me see this up. This is another question. In my life, I had many dreams where there are kids in a huge house that are possessed. Now that I am a healing facilitator, I've exercised them. Am I doing this in real time in a different dimension? Yeah, you're actually doing this in a different dimension. There are many, you're helping them, but you're helping them in the spirit, in one of the spirit dimensions. There's actually dimensions within dimensions. There's multiple physical dimensions and there's multiple spirit dimensions. And it's like, you can look at it different ways. Let me give you two different ways to look at it. You can look at our earth as a physical earth, and with the dark abyss or purgatory is below the crust of the earth. And then there's a lower zone from the crust of the earth to the lowest level of heaven. And then there's heaven, and there's different layers of heaven around the earth. And then there's levels of heaven around the solar system, galaxy, so, etc. And then even within these levels, there are different areas. You can also look, so that's one way of looking at it. So if you're a healing facilitator, meaning that you have some mediumistic talent, so you're able through your pineal gland, right, to cross over from this physical sphere to the spiritual sphere. Now, how can this be? Well, First of all, the physical sphere is a subset of the spiritual sphere. And you can look at it also this way, is that us in a physical sphere, where it's like we're in a simulation. We are put here in these physical bodies to limit our power, because they want us to be exposed to different stimuli to change our character and our personality. So you're always connected to the spirit plane. Some people have more powerful connections and some people less powerful connections. You have a more powerful connection. Therefore, you are able to reach through the dimension and affect those people. And you're doing it in, even though they may not say time, right, in that different dimension, but there are states, right? So when we say there's no time, it's kind of a difficult concept. There's no time in the spirit world. Well, that all that means is that nothing degrades, right? If you're in heaven and you build a house and you go incarnate for 80 years on earth, you come back, there's no dust. Your garden's the same. There's no weeds, because you didn't wish those weeds to be there. Then nothing decays. Your house is fine. The paint hasn't chipped. But there are different states, right? You can build a new house. That's a new state. Things change, but the time doesn't move things on. We have time in the physical world to keep us on this treadmill, to keep us going forward. So, yes, you're doing that in your real time. At their time, they're in the spirit world probably, and you're helping them. And who knows, they may be symbolism of kids in a huge house. They may be this, you know better than I do. They may be children that have been possessed in different physical locations, but that somehow the spirit world has connected you to see those representative in a spiritual location. I don't know, but these things will happen. So I hope that answers your question. That the answer is yes. You're probably doing that in your real time, but in a different plane or dimension. I use the word plane and dimension interchangeably. Okay, so I've gone way over time. If there's any other questions, but again, before I forget, I would like to have everyone, if you're interested in Spiritism, please read the Spirits book. But also, I have on my yes. I have on my site, nwspiritism.com, I have lots of books and resources, which I think would be very helpful for anyone. And then I have this as an introduction to Spiritism, Spiritism 101, the third revelation. Now, I have this in paperback, Kindle, and Audible, but on my site, I also have it in PDF. So you can go to my site. Let me bring this up here. I think I lost it here. Here we go on screen. nwspiritism.com. You scroll down the right-hand navigation bar, and you can download Spiritism 101, Third Revelation. It's less than 100 pages, and it will introduce you to Spiritism. Then, if that is probably a good way to start, then what you can do is then you can also then read the Spirits book by Allan Kardec. He codified it in the 1850s. If you don't want to read it, well, first you can buy it in paperback on Amazon.com. You can click on the picture of Allan Kardec on my site. It'll take you to the FEB website. You can buy it there. So actually, I think it's cheaper than Amazon.com. You can also put in the Spirits book or Allan Kardec space PDF. You'll find that. You'll find out in PDF. That's how I read the Spirits book. I found it on PDF. Also on my YouTube channel, which you're listening to now, if you go to the playlist, the Spirits book, I have every chapter recorded in the Spirits book. I also have it in MP3 format and in Audible format on my site, nwspiritism.com. So I'm hoping to give you a lot of different avenues. Spiritism is wonderful. It tells you about your life here. It tells you why you're going through what you're going. And hopefully it really can change your life. And it changes your life because you understand it more. Once you understand the whole concept and what you're living within, then you go, oh, okay, I know why that happened. I don't know why I just got cheated out of that, because I probably did it to someone else. I mean, that's how I start thinking now. I don't let things affect me so much. Okay, so oh, there's Ricardo. Hi, Ricardo. I am gonna sign off now. It's been 80 minutes to my usual lesson 60, and I want to bless everyone. And please, if you're interested, learn more about Spiritism. Read about Spiritism. It's really going to change your life. It's wonderful. It's all about the golden rule. And the Spirits say, if you want to summarize Spiritism, it's the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. God bless.